Dinosaurs. Little is known about this large carnivore that was named by an Asian paleontologist in 1984. Found in Sichuan, China, Dinosaurus had closely spaced meat-eating fangs and is thought to be related to Megalosaurus. Alive during the mid-Jurassic period, the size and details of this dinosaur are yet to be discovered.
Kakuru and the armored dinosaur Minmi were the first dinosaurs discovered on the continent of Australia in 1980. Found in the Marie Formation in the central part of southern Australia, Kakuru was described from a shin bone and a few pieces of fossils. Scientists believe Kakuru was an 8-foot theropod similar to the ostrich dinosaur Abelisaurus. Kentrosaurus was a plated dinosaur from East Africa, about half the size of its North American relative Stegosaurus. Kentrosaurus had 2 rows of bony plates that ran from its neck to the middle of its back. Sharp pairs of spikes took over from there, proceeding down the lower back and tail with 2 spines protruding from the hips. Kentrosaurus moved slowly, feeding on low-lying plants. Critosaurus was a 30-foot member of the duck-billed family Hadrosauridae. Unlike its relative Hadrosaurus, however, Critosaurus had a pronounced bump between its eyes and snout. This herbivore stood 9 to 10 feet tall and walked on its hind legs, using its 4-fingered hands to browse through vegetation. Critosaurus had a hard-cutting beak, as well as hundreds of grinding teeth to chew the twigs and leaves it ate. Like most hadrosaurs, critosaurs traveled in herds to protect themselves from hungry tyrannosaurs looking for a meal.
Kronosaurus. The largest pliosaur was Kronosaurus, a 42-foot-long marine reptile that lived during the early Cretaceous period. Kronosaurus had a 9-foot skull with jaws stronger than those of Tyrannosaurus. This powerful predator attacked sharks, squid, ichthyosaurs, and even related plesiosaurs in its search for food. Kronosaurus made its home in the warm, shallow seas off the coast of Australia. Lambeosaurus. One of the most interesting members of the hadrosaur family was Lambeosaurus. There were several different species of Lambeosaurus, and one of them, whose remains were discovered in California, may have been 54 feet long, making it the largest duckbill. Lambeosaurus had an unusual 2-pronged head crest. One bone pointed forward, and a smaller curved spike projected back from its head. Lambeosaurus had a long, flexible neck, enabling it to reach up for the preferred fruits, twigs, and pine needles it ate. Lanosaurus. Lanosaurus was a small plant-eating dinosaur discovered in South Africa. It had several unusual features, including self-sharpening teeth that replaced themselves in groups of 3 when worn. Lanosaurus appears to have been both bipedal and quadrupedal. Most of the time it walked on all 4s, but was able to escape predators by friskily sprinting away on its hind legs. Abelisaurus. This late Cretaceous sauropod reached 60 feet in length, but its build was slimmer than that of Titanosaurus. Abelisaurus had a long, relatively slender tail that it used to whiplash attacking predators, and it may have had light armor on its back as well. Remains of this tremendous 4-legged plant-eater have been found in South America and India. Friedrich von Huene, Europe's leading dinosaurologist of the early 20th century, named Abelisaurus in 1927. Leptoceratops. Leptoceratops was a member of a small group of dinosaurs that fell between the families of parrot dinosaurs and the early horned dinosaurs. All of the later ceratopsids were 4-legged. Leptoceratops could walk on 2 or 4 legs. It also had a bone piece extending from its head that was developmentally between a ridge and the neck frills sported by horned ceratopsians. Leptoceratops had no horns and was lightly built with almost no protection. This herbivore's only defense against predators was its ability to run away, as evidenced by its slimmer, longer-boned leg. DinoSaurus. DinoSaurus was a tiny bipedal plant eater that preceded the ankylosaurs and hypsilophodonts. It had clawed, four-toed feet and five-fingered hands used to dig up roots and grasp branches. DinoSaurus had two types of teeth used for chopping plant material: pointed front teeth and serrated side teeth shaped like tiny arrowheads. British paleontologist Peter M. Galton named DinoSaurus in 1978. Lexovisaurus. One of the first stegosaurs ever discovered was the 16-foot Lexovisaurus. This herbivore's back and tail were protected by a covering of armor consisting of flat plates and cylindrical spines with pointy ends. Lexovisaurus existed during the middle part of the Jurassic period. Its remains have been located in both England and France. Lophorodon. Lophorodon is known from a skeleton found in Alabama that scientists believe may be that of a juvenile. A member of the family of hadrosaurs or duckbills, this dinosaur grew to be about 45 feet long. It had cheek teeth, a horny beak, and a bump on its nose that earned it its name, which means crested snout. Loricasaurus. This large plant eater was a sauropod whose scanty remains tell us little about its true appearance. From the material gathered, it seems that Loricasaurus had some kind of light armor on its back similar to Saltosaurus. Scientists believe this dinosaur was approximately 60 feet long, with a sizable neck and tail characteristic of herbivores in its group. Alive during the late Cretaceous, Loricasaurus inhabited present-day Argentina. Lufengosaurus. Bearing a strong resemblance to its relative Plateosaurus, Lufengosaurus was a 20-foot prosauropod found in China in the 1930s and 1940s. Unlike the later sauropods, Lufengosaurus had short forelimbs and appears to have walked upright on its hind legs, balanced by its neck and tail. It had a deep, large skull containing widely spaced teeth. Lufengosaurus appears to have been an herbivore, but its small teeth were disturbingly sharp, and no conclusive dietary evidence has been found. Maiasaura. From fossil nests found in Montana containing skeletons of infant and adult Maiasaura, much has been learned about how young hadrosaurs developed and were cared for. The nesting site in Montana inspired the name Maiasaura, which means good mother lizard. Herds of these duckbills nested together for protection. Eggs were laid in a circular pattern, each layer buried in dirt. The pile of eggs was then covered with vegetation that camouflaged the nest and kept the eggs warm as it rotted. Females guarded the nest from a short distance away to prevent the eggs from being trampled on or stolen. Food was brought to hatchlings for 1 to 2 years as they matured. Mamenchisaurus. Mamenchisaurus had the longest neck of any animal that ever lived. 19 enormous reinforced vertebrae formed a neck that was an astounding 36 feet long. Each neck vertebra was over twice the length of each back vertebra and was supported by bony struts designed to wrap around the spine. The enormous weight of this cumbersome appendage was somewhat lessened by the presence of hollowed-out spaces in the vertebrae. Manchurosaurus. In 1902, the first dinosaurs from China were found by a Russian colonel along the Chinese side of the Amur River, which formed a boundary between Russia and China. About 13 years later, Manchurosaurus became the first named dinosaur from China. It was a 26-foot-long hadrosaur that walked on 2 legs. Manchurosaurus was a plant eater with a toothless beak, powerful jaws, and batteries of self-sharpening cheek teeth for grinding its food. Massospondylus. This medium-sized prosauropod lived in parts of Africa and North America nearly 200 million years ago. It had a long neck, a small skull, and rounded teeth. Massospondylus was an herbivore, but it lacked the ability to grind its food well enough with its teeth alone. To aid the digestive process, this dinosaur swallowed rough stones that helped break up the plant material in its stomach. Modern birds behave in a similar way, swallowing gravel to grind food. Massospondylus also had thumb claws it probably used for digging. Megalosaurus. Megalosaurus was a fearsome predator that stalked large sauropods in Europe and Africa during the Jurassic time period. Megalosaurus was the first dinosaur classified on the basis of a bone found in 1676. It was a solid, strong dinosaur with a large head and jaws filled with curved carnivorous teeth. This 30-foot-long meat-eater had a deep tail for balance as it walked upright, and clawed fingers and toes for tearing the flesh of its victims. Metriacanthosaurus. This theropod from southern England grew to be 26 feet long. It had spines up to 10 inches long attached to its vertebrae. Paleontologists believe that these spines supported a sail of skin that may have helped regulate body heat by absorbing and releasing warmth as needed. Metriacanthosaurus had stronger arms than most large meat-eating dinosaurs and thick, powerful legs as well. Its toes and fingers had sizable claws to attack and tear the flesh of its prey. Microceratops. The tiniest of all horned dinosaurs was Microceratops. Only 2 feet long, this dinosaur was much smaller and lighter than its relatives. Scientists believe that Microceratops was a quick runner because it had long legs and a slimmer body than others of its kind. Despite its differences, Microceratops definitely belonged to the horn group, displaying the characteristic neck frill and small curved beak. Microceratops was an herbivore and probably escaped predators by outrunning them, using speed to compensate for its lack of size. Minmi. Discovered in 1964, Minmi was a small 6-foot ankylosaur that lived in Australia during the Cretaceous time period. Unlike other armored dinosaurs, Minmi appears to have been a fast runner, as evidenced by the atypical structure of its backbone. The unusual vertebrae were reinforced by sword-shaped rods of bone designed to absorb the impact of this dinosaur's weight as it hit the ground with great force. Like all ankylosaurs, Minmi was an herbivore, feeding on tender plants close to the ground. Monoclonius. Monoclonius means single horn, which was this dinosaur's most distinguishing feature. Monoclonius was a ceratopsid with a large curved horn protruding from the top of its snout and a short neck frill with rounded edges. The 20-foot herbivore lived in North America during the late Cretaceous time period. Only one complete skeleton of Monoclonius has been found, and this was accomplished by Charles Sternberg in 1937. Mononychus. The most recent dinosaur found was Mononychus, announced in 1993. Scientists from the United States and China unearthed this turkey-sized predator in the Gobi Desert. The discovery of Mononychus is especially exciting because it was found with feathers, adding credence to the current theory that modern birds stemmed from dinosaurs. Like the theropods, its mouth was filled with sharp carnivorous teeth and it had a long tail. Mononychus appears to be a true missing link, possessing characteristics of both dinosaurs and birds. Further research should clarify the true classification of this curious reptile. Montanoceratops. With the exception of the straight horn growing from its snout, Montanoceratops was much like its Asian relative Protoceratops. Unlike the later ceratopsids, this 6-foot herbivore still had beak teeth and clawed fingers instead of hooves. Its tail was also atypical. Due to spines under the skin, it was thick but flexible. Montanoceratops lived in what is now the western United States during the Cretaceous period. Moosaurus. Although parts of larger skeletons have since been discovered, Moosaurus, meaning mouse lizard, was so named because it was the tiniest dinosaur ever found. A fossilized nest of eggs and newly hatched dinosaurs was found in Argentina in the late 1970s. The largest skeleton was only 8 inches long and was identified to be a neuthrosauropod from the late Triassic period. Scientists estimate that an adult Moosaurus would have grown to be 10 feet, with a short neck but long body and tail. Abelisaurus. The most complete Australian dinosaur skeleton ever found was that of the recently discovered herbivore Abelisaurus. At 23 feet in length, it was only slightly smaller than its European relative Iguanodon. Abelisaurus resembled several other ornithopods except for the prominent hooked arch on its snout. This dinosaur had many large teeth in the back of its jaws, but the front formed a toothless bird-like beak. Abelisaurus lived during the late Cretaceous time period, before the duck-billed dinosaurs replaced the iguanodons. Nanotyrannus. Paleontologists discovered the skull of Nanotyrannus in Montana over 50 years ago, but identified it as the young Albertosaurus. In 1988, this dinosaur was re-identified as Nanotyrannus, meaning little tyrant. Nanotyrannus grew to a length of 17 to 18 feet. It had an exceptionally long head in proportion to its body and had curved, sharp fangs. Unlike their carnivorous relatives, Nanotyrannus and Tyrannosaurus had forward-facing eyes, which gave them a distinct advantage in judging size and distance, valuable skills for predatory dinosaurs. Nodosaurus. Nodosaurus was an armored dinosaur without a tail club, the model for others of its type. From neck to tail, Nodosaurus was covered with bands of rectangular plates. Embedded in these plates were the small bony knobs or nodules that gave this dinosaur its name. Its legs, shoulders, and hips were muscular and thickly built to support the weight of its armor. The head of this plant eater was extremely small and narrow. Nodosaurus moved slowly, searching for preferred forms of vegetation, relying on its armor for protection. Omisaurus. Only Mamenchisaurus had a longer neck than this impressive sauropod. Omisaurus had a 30-foot neck, whose weight was reduced by the presence of hollow spaces between the thin-boned vertebrae. The Asian sauropod was named in 1939 after Omishan, a sacred mountain site near the spot where the fossil was exhumed. Omisaurus may have been related to Camarasaurus, another large plant eater alive in the late Jurassic. Numerous tail clubs were found with skeletons of Omisaurus, but none were attached. Omisaurus ate leaves it plucked from tall trees with its spoon-shaped teeth. Opisthocoelicaudia. A dinosaur hunting expedition in the Gobi Desert in 1965 produced a skeleton of the sauropod Opisthocoelicaudia complete except for the skull and neck. This large Asian plant eater was 40 to 50 feet long and weighed up to 20 tons. Opisthocoelicaudia had characteristics that no other sauropod had, which may have enabled it to be a specialized eater. Unique vertebrae made it possible for this dinosaur to use its tail for support to reach higher trees. Opisthocoelicaudia's hip socket was strong enough to hold the dinosaur's weight on 2 legs. Ophthalmosaurus. Ophthalmosaurus was a member of the family Ichthyosauridae. It lived during the late Jurassic period, and its remains have been found on 3 continents: North America, South America, and Europe. This marine reptile was so named because its most distinctive characteristic was the enormous size of its eyes in proportion to its body. The fossils found revealed eye sockets 4 to 6 inches long, occupying the entire depth of its skull. This feature indicates that Ophthalmosaurus was probably a night-feeding reptile, eating squid and other marine animals close to the surface of the sea. Ornitholestes. During the late Jurassic period, many large dinosaurs ruled. including the ferocious Allosaurus. Smaller predators like Ornitholestes also fared well, however, as their niche in the food chain was comparable to that of modern jackals and hyenas. Ornitholestes preyed upon the small and weak, hunting in packs or competing for the remains of dinosaurs killed by larger carnivores. This 6.5-foot bird robber was aggressive and agile, rushing in to seize any opportunity for a meal. Fossilized remains of Ornitholestes were found in the western United States. Ornithomimus. Ornithomimus was part of the family of bird mimics commonly called ostrich dinosaurs, as they are similar in appearance to large flightless fast-running birds. Ornithomimus was 12 feet long but weighed little, and its long legs allowed it to sprint at speeds of up to 30 miles per hour. Unlike most dinosaurs, Ornithomimus had no teeth, just a hard beak. Scientists believed that this group of dinosaurs was omnivorous, eating insects, fruit, lizards, and eggs. Ornithomimus had a long tail held stiffly out when it ran and clawed fingers capable of grasping small objects. It defended itself against predators by running away. Othnielia. Othnielia was a very small hypsilophodont, about 4.5 feet long. It lived in the western United States during the late Jurassic period. Othnielia was an herbivore that walked on 2 legs. Its little head ended in a curved beak, and its long legs were built for running. Its short forelimbs ended in 5-fingered hands that were used to grab branches or leaves. Unlike other hypsilophodonts, Othnelia's teeth were enveloped in enamel, perhaps designed to accommodate a specialized diet. DinoSaurus. 2 complete skeletons of this interesting species were found in the southern Sahara in 1965. Tyrannosaurus was related to Iguanodon, Camptosaurus, and Telmatosaurus, but it had a bizarre blend of characteristics that set it apart from these dinosaurs. Tyrannosaurus had a large head with a snout resembling those of the later duck-billed dinosaurs. It also sported a tall sail or ridge running down its back, formed by spines attached to its vertebrae. Blood vessels running through this sail would have helped retain or release heat. The 23-foot herbivore had an abundance of efficient teeth to grind the leaves and seeds that made up its fibrous diet. Oviraptor. The name Oviraptor means egg thief, and many scientists believe this to be an accurate description of the small theropod. There are many reasons for this assumption. First, Oviraptor was found preserved with a nest of Protoceratops eggs. Another indication was the odd shape of its skull, especially the snout. It was short and deep, unlike those of related dinosaurs, yet it had no teeth. Its powerful beak and jaws were strong enough to crush objects, yet it could not chew. Oviraptor stood upright and had curved fingers capable of grasping. Pachycephalosaurus. Pachycephalosaurus was the largest bone-headed dinosaur. Like those of its relatives, Prenocephaly and Stegosaurus, its solid dome was round and smooth, but was an astounding 8 to 12 inches thick. Pachycephalosaurus clearly engaged in headbutting. The dome would have protected its brain during such activity. This bonehead had a blunt snout and a garland of horns circling its dome. Pachycephalosaurus ate soft plants, as evidenced by its weak, triangular teeth. Pachyrhinosaurus. This 20-foot-long ceratopsian was found in Alberta, Canada. Instead of horns on its nose and brow like its relative Styracosaurus, this dinosaur had a flat face with a patch of thickly padded bone that was raised along its snout. Like all ceratopsians, Pachyrhinosaurus was an herbivore or plant-eating dinosaur. It had a short, hard, parrot-like beak and batteries of teeth in its jaw for grinding food. Its short neck frill was rimmed with bony knobs and spikes, but Pachyrhinosaurus could not defend itself as well as its long-horned relatives. Abelisaurus. Abelisaurus was the last nodosaur to roam North America during the late Cretaceous period. It was very heavily built, weighing 3.5 tons, most of which could be attributed to large square plates of armor with bony knobs attached. Abelisaurus was further armed with sharp shoulder and side spikes, much longer than those of its relatives. This armor was extremely important to a plant eater so low to the ground, especially one without a tail club to defend itself. Abelisaurus had a thin head tapered to the end of the snout, which may indicate that it was a more selective eater than other armored dinosaurs. Instead of grazing indiscriminately, it probably ate specific plants it rooted out from surrounding vegetation. Parasaurolophus. A most unusual duck-billed dinosaur was Parasaurolophus, a hadrosaur from North America. This herbivore had a short snout and one other distinguishing feature, a 5 to 6 foot long crest projecting back over its shoulders. Unlike its relative Saurolophus, this dinosaur's crest was a hollow tube that connected to the nasal cavity. Many scientists believe that this feature allowed Parasaurolophus to make honking or bellowing sounds to communicate with other members of its species. Parksosaurus. This 8-foot herbivore was one of the last dinosaurs on Earth. Parksosaurus was a stocky hypsilophodont with short, sturdy limbs. Its tail contained bony tendons that enabled it to be held straight out. This helped balance the dinosaur when walking on 2 legs, thus freeing its front limbs to grasp food. Parksosaurus had a small head, exceptionally large eyes, and ridged cheek teeth. Its diet consisted of leaves, fruit, and possibly insects as well. Patagosaurus. To date, the only definite sauropod that paleontologists have found in South America is Patagosaurus. Patagosaurus lived during the mid-Jurassic period, approximately 15 million years earlier than its North American relatives. This medium-sized herbivore was 50 feet long, with an estimated weight of 15 tons. Patagosaurus was similar to its relatives Cetiosaurus and Haplocanthosaurus, but its hip bones and vertebrae were more primitively developed. Pentaceratops. Pentaceratops was a large horned dinosaur 25 feet long and 10 feet high. Its head alone was about 7.5 feet long, and the frill of bone around its neck was exceptionally large. This dinosaur was named Pentaceratops as it appeared to sport 5 horns, 2 above the brow, 1 nose horn, and 2 from its cheeks. These last 2, however, were bones jutting out a bit from the jaw, not true horns. Pentaceratops lived in forested areas of what is currently New Mexico. Piatnitskysaurus. Skeletons of Piatnitskysaurus were found in Argentina on expeditions over the years of 1977 through 1983. The medium-sized theropod greatly resembled Allosaurus, who later dominated North America. Piatnitskysaurus walked on its muscular hind legs, using its shorter forelimbs to grasp its prey. It had long, pointy teeth and 4-toed feet. J.F. Bonaparte named this 15-foot meat-eater in 1979. Pinacosaurus. While searching in Mongolia for clues as to the origin of man, an expedition from the American Museum of Natural History happened upon dinosaur eggs and skeletal fossils, including Pinacosaurus, one of the first armored dinosaurs discovered in Asia. It resembled other ankylosaurs except for its skull, which was only partially covered with small plates. Its neck, body, and tail, however, were fully covered with armor, and its tail ended in a bony club that could have killed an attacking predator such as Velociraptor. Pisanosaurus. The first known dinosaur from the Ornithocene order was Pisanosaurus. Incomplete skeletal remains of Pisanosaurus have been found in Argentina. Paleontologists studied the backbone, leg, foot, jaw, and teeth of this dinosaur and concluded that it was probably similar in many ways to Heterodontosaurus. The Sanosaurus was a 3-foot-long herbivore that lived during the late Triassic period. Plateosaurus. Plateosaurus was one of the largest dinosaurs alive during the late Triassic period. This 26-foot prosauropod had a small, flat head with leaf-shaped teeth that chopped up the plants it ate. Plateosaurs may have also swallowed stones to help them digest their food, which consisted of tree ferns and other tall plants. Plateosaurs were found in what is now Western Europe. Plesiosaurus. Plesiosaurus was the forerunner of an entire group of marine reptiles that lived from the early Jurassic period to the end of the late Cretaceous, and it survived longer than any of the other members of its family. Plesiosaurus did not have a streamlined body. It was formed for mobility rather than speed. It had a long, flexible neck and flippers to steer it effortlessly toward its prey. Plesiosaurus was 7 to 8 feet in length, and its remains have been found in England and Germany. Phrenocephali. This Asian pachycephalosaur, or bonehead, inhabited forest areas in higher elevations during the late Cretaceous time period. Phrenocephali had the most rounded dome or cap of bone of any member of its family. Small spikes and knobs of bone formed a wreath around this cap. Phrenocephali apparently engaged in head-butting contests with others of its kind, which is a behavior shared by certain species of modern-day sheep and goats. Prosaurolophus. Prosaurolophus was a North American hadrosaur with a broad duckbill and an unusual bump or crest above its eyes. This dinosaur was likely to be found in herds with others of its kind foraging for food. Prosaurolophus walked on its hind legs, using its front limbs to reach for leaves and balance itself. An herbivore, Prosaurolophus used its bony bill to nip off vegetation and its cheek teeth to grind the plants it ate. Protoceratops. Protoceratops was a small but sturdy horned dinosaur. It had a large head, wide neck frill, and its snout ended in a prominent curved beak. Protoceratops was 6 feet long and weighed only 400 pounds. It had no horns, but its snout had a hump that might have been the beginnings of a horn. Protoceratops may have been the ancestor of all horned dinosaurs. Female Protoceratops made nests in which 10 to 25 eggs were laid. Psittacosaurus. The most ancient ceratopsid known is Psittacosaurus, a 6.5-foot herbivore found in Asia in 1922. This primitive dinosaur walked on its hind legs and had long hands capable of grasping. It had a heavy ridge of bone that formed a square shelf on the back of its skull, but it had no horns or neck frills like the later ceratopsids. The name Psittacosaurus means parrot lizard, referring to this dinosaur's curved, toothless beak. Pteranodon. With its huge 23-foot wingspan, Pteranodon was the second largest of all the flying reptiles, and it had several other distinctive features as well. Pteranodon had no tail, and it possessed an unusual crest that jutted out from the back of its head. Scientists theorize that this pterodactyl probably spent much of its time gliding on air currents, using this crest to help steer or counterbalance the weight of its long, heavy-jawed head. Pteranodon is believed to have been a fish-eating reptile. It had a large brain and keen eyesight to spot the fish that it swooped down to catch with its long, toothless beak. Pterodactylus. Pterodactylus was the smallest member of the group of flying reptiles known as pterodactyls. Spanning 2.5 feet, its wings were supported by the bones of the hands and the extremely long forked digits characteristic of pterodactyls. It had a short tail and long, thin jaws that were filled with small, sharp teeth. Paleontologists believe that Pterodactylus was a fish-eating reptile. Quetzalcoatlus. In 1975, bones belonging to this enormous flying reptile were found. Quetzalcoatlus, named after an Aztec god, lived during the Cretaceous period and had a 40-foot wingspan, which was the largest of any flying reptile. This remarkable creature weighed between 110 and 140 pounds, and each wing was about as long as a bus. Most pterodactyls were marine reptiles, flying low above the sea to catch fish. But Quetzalcoatlus was probably a vulture, soaring high in the sky to spot the remains of reptiles upon which it fed. Rhamphorhynchus. Rhamphorhynchus was a pterosaur about the size of a modern seagull. It had narrow wings and a long tail tipped with a broad rudder to help it steer when flying. Curiously, Rhamphorhynchus had a covering of hair over its wings and body similar to the fibers found in the wings of bats. Rhamphorhynchus had long, thin jaws filled with pointy teeth that faced outward. This jaw formation helped it to glide low over water, skimming up fish that swam close to the surface. Raohosaurus. Raohosaurus was one of the largest and last prosauropods, foreshadowing the giant plant-eating sauropods that followed in its thundering footsteps. Raohosaurus roamed present-day Argentina during the late Triassic to early Jurassic periods. Its heavy bone structure and skeletal attachments revealed that this herbivore walked on 4 legs with its bulky mass evenly distributed. Its backbone was rigid and hollow, but the bones in its legs were solid and mass enough to bear its body weight. Cycania. Cycania was a 23-foot Asian ankylosaur that lived in a hot, dry climate during the late Cretaceous period. One partial skeleton uncovered showed a Cycania that died in a sandstorm as it was found flat on its belly in sandstone. This ankylosaur's armor was preserved intact and in its natural position. It consisted of bony knobs fused to large ridged plates. Spikes curved back from the head, and its tail culminated in a small 3-plated club. Cycania was an herbivore with small, weak teeth. Like all ankylosaurs, it relied on its armor and tail club for defense against attacking predators. Saltosaurus. Saltosaurus was a moderately sized sauropod with a unique feature. Its back was covered with bony plates ranging in size from 1/4 inch to 4.5 inches wide. The plates were embedded in its thick hide and may have incorporated small spikes as well. In most other ways, Saltosaurus resembled the other large plant eaters existing at that time. It lumbered about in search of vegetation, somewhat protected by its size and unusual armor. Saltopus. Named in 1910 from a skeleton found in Scotland, Saltopus is one of the oldest known dinosaurs. It was a tiny theropod, only 2 feet long, closely related to Coelophysis. Despite its diminutive stature, Saltopus was an active predator, capturing the lizards and insects that shared its Triassic habitat. Sarcoleptes. This mid-Jurassic nodosaur is one of the oldest known armored dinosaurs. It was described by a British paleontologist in 1893. A 4-legged plant eater, it was protected by its bony plates, slabs, and spikes. Sarcoleptes had a long, heavy tail, but no tail club. Sarcoleptes grew to be approximately 15 feet long. Sarcosaurus. Sarcosaurus was a small predator from the early Jurassic period. It belonged to the family Ceratosauridae, or horned lizards. Fossilized bones from the spine, hip, and leg regions have been found, enabling paleontologists to determine that Sarcosaurus was lightly built, reaching a length of 10 to 12 feet. Sarcosaurus appears to have been a swift runner, which would have made this meat-eater a formidable predator. Remains of Sarcosaurus were found in England in 1921. Saurolophus. Fossilized remains of this hadrosaur have been found in both Canada and China. Saurolophus grew to be 30 to 40 feet long and was one of the many plant-eating duckbills alive during the late Cretaceous period. A hollow crest of bone, one of the trademarks of the hadrosaur group, extended up from the center of its snout, curving back from the top of its head. Scientists speculate that an attached bag of skin may have been inflated by the animal to make honking sounds. Sauropelta. Sauropelta was a 17-foot armored dinosaur that weighed nearly 3 tons. Having no tail club, it belonged to the family of Nodosaurs. Sauropelta was one of few armored dinosaurs whose skeleton was found with the armor intact. It had small oval plates along its neck, back, and tail. Larger, rounder plates appeared above its hips. Sauropelta also had spikes protruding from its neck and sides of its body. This herbivore had 2 kinds of teeth: peg-like teeth in front of its jaw and leaf-shaped teeth along the insides of its cheeks to grind plants. Ornithoides. This 2-legged bird-like predator was 6.5 feet long. It had a relatively big brain and large deep-set eyes that faced forward. Some scientists think that this dinosaur may have been almost as intelligent as some modern mammals. An agile 60-pound theropod, its narrow jaws contained sharp serrated teeth. The dinosaur's front limbs were long, and each hand had 3 grasping fingers that were tipped with sharp claws. Its legs and feet were bird-like, and there was a small, retractable, sickle-shaped claw on each second toe that was most likely used as a weapon. Troodon and Deinonychus were related to this dinosaur. Saurornitholestes. Saurornitholestes was a rare dromaeosaur that is only known from a skull, teeth, and arm bones found in Alberta, Canada in 1978. These minimal remains are enough to lead some scientists to believe that this carnivore had an exceptionally large brain. Saurornitholestes was a 6-foot-long predator that was probably quite similar to Deinonychus and other sickle-clawed dinosaurs. Scelidosaurus. Scelidosaurus represents a group of dinosaurs that had characteristics of both stegosaurs and ankylosaurs. Because this odd dinosaur's body coverings more closely resembled those of ankylosaurs, however, most scientists consider it to be a primitive member of this group. The early Jurassic herbivore had studded armor that offered some protection against predators, but was less effective than that of its descendants. Scelidosaurus had an 8-inch head, which was tiny for its heavy 11-foot-long body. It had a toothless beak and flimsy, spoon-shaped teeth with which it chewed only the most tender plants. Scutellosaurus. Scutellosaurus was one of the first ornithischians on Earth, and it possessed an odd blend of characteristics found in many different dinosaurs that descended from it. Alive during the Triassic period in North America, Scutellosaurus was 4 feet long, about the size of an average dog. Its strong jaws were filled with sharp front teeth, as well as ridged pointed teeth along the sides, presumably for chewing plants. Scutellosaurus also had light crocodile-like armor on its back. Scientists believe it walked on all 4s, but stood up to run on its 2 hind legs when necessary. Cacernosaurus. Cacernosaurus was a flat-headed hadrosaur, one of only 2 types of duckbills to be found in South America. The fossilized remains of Cretasaurus, a much larger hadrosaur, were found in Argentina, where Cacernosaurus was also unearthed. Like all duck-billed dinosaurs, Zephyrosaurus was a small plant eater with a toothless beak and grinding cheek teeth along the sides of its jaws. Seismosaurus. Estimated to have been 120 to 140 feet long, Seismosaurus has been tentatively but quite aptly named Earthquake Lizard. The colossal bones of this impressive sauropod were found in New Mexico in 1986. It appears to have been similar to Diplodocus, only bigger, and its front legs were much longer. Seismosaurus has not been fully described yet, but if scientists' assumptions prove correct, this herbivore will be known as the world's largest animal. Celosaurus. Several skeletons of Celosaurus have been found in Germany. The 10-foot herbivore is the oldest known prosauropod, existing in the mid to late Triassic period. Celosaurus was closely related to Plateosaurus, but was smaller and had a different arrangement of teeth. Scientists believe it was a selective eater, choosing a particular type of soft plant on which to graze. Fewer fossils of Celosaurus have been found than other prosauropods, either because it was older or more rare than similar dinosaurs that flourished in the Jurassic period. Shamosaurus. Shamosaurus, one of the oldest known ankylosaurs, was named in 1983 by a Russian paleontologist. 2 skulls of this dinosaur were found in the Gobi Desert, one of which had 2 armor-plated collars. Shamosaurus was a 20-foot-long, 4-legged plant eater with a broad, low head. Large bony spines projected from its back. Because of its narrow beak and small teeth, Shamosaurus was probably a selective eater, poking through vegetation to find its preferred food. Shanshanosaurus. In the 1960s, paleontologists discovered the partial skeleton of a small theropod. Shanshanosaurus was similar to Abelisaurus, but it had extremely large eyes in its foot-long skull. These oversized eyes helped it stalk its prey in dim light. It probably hunted at dawn or dusk. Shanshanosaurus preyed on small lizards and mammals, relying on its speed and vision to capture its meals. Shantungosaurus. Averaging 52 feet in length, Shantungosaurus was the largest of the hadrosaurs. Although Shantungosaurus was a plant eater, its long, flat snout appears to have held more teeth than any other dinosaur. This heavy Asian duckbill probably walked on all 4 limbs to support its weight. Shonosaurus. 50 feet in length, Shonosaurus was the largest of the ichthyosaurs, a group of marine reptiles that flourished for 100 million years. It was also the oldest, inhabiting the Triassic seas of what was to become North America. Shonosaurus fed on fish and had several features that distinguished it from other ichthyosaurs. Its only teeth were located in the very front of its jaws, and its 2 pairs of paddles were equal in length, instead of shorter in the back. Despite its large size, Shonosaurus was proportioned in a fashion similar to other ichthyosaurs. Its head and neck, body, and fish-like tail occupied equal thirds of its overall length. Silvosaurus. Silvosaurus was a primitive armored dinosaur that lived in the Midwestern United States during the earliest part of the Cretaceous time period. This nodosaur had plates along its neck, back, and tail. Spikes protruded from the sides of its body and may have been present on its tail as well. Silvosaurus had an unusually small, light skull, teeth in its beak, a long neck, and large cheekbones. It moved slowly, searching for plants to eat. Spinosaurus. A few dinosaurs had sails made of rigid spines attached to their vertebrae, but this 40-foot carnivore had a fin 6 feet high. Scientists believe the Spinosaurus absorbed heat through this sail to warm its cold-blooded body. It had straight teeth with small serrations, different from the teeth of other meat eaters. Spinosaurus lived in Africa during the Cretaceous time period. Styracosaurus. Until the recent find of Eoraptor, Styracosaurus was considered to be the oldest known dinosaur. This 6-foot predator marked an important transition between the early primitive reptiles and the two orders of dinosaurs that followed. Styracosaurus displayed traits from both of these orders. A meat eater, its head was large, housing jaws filled with curved, serrated teeth. Unlike the later theropods, Styracosaurus had 5-fingered hands and 5-toed feet. Stegosaurus. This 6.5-foot, 120-pound plant eater was misidentified many times until enough skeletons were found to identify it as a pachycephalosaur. Most bone-headed dinosaurs had domed heads used for headbutting. Like many other types of animals, the male Stegosaurus probably fought other males in his species for territory and mates. The bony caps on their heads protected their brains, allowing their skulls to withstand impact that would normally prove fatal. Stegosaurus. One of the most interesting and well-known dinosaurs is Stegosaurus. Stegosaurus was a slow ground-feeding herbivore that weighed 2 tons. Large bony plates ran along its back, and sharp spikes on its tail were used for defense. The plates may have served to regulate body temperature or deter predators. The plates were up to 3 feet long and made Stegosaurus look much larger. Struthiomimus. Struthiomimus is the most well-known member of the family Ornithomimidae, as it is known from a complete skeleton. This is rare, especially since this dinosaur was relatively small with hollow, delicate bones. The fossilized remains of this ostrich-like dinosaur found in New Jersey and Alberta revealed that Struthiomimus was 13 feet long. It had a small, 10-inch skull and 3-fingered hands equipped with straight claws. The structure of these claws suggests that Struthiomimus probably used them to pull leaves from trees. Most scientists believe that this dinosaur was an omnivore, however, supplementing its diet of plant material with a variety of insects, lizards, and small mammals. Struthiosaurus. Found in Austria, Hungary, Romania, and France, Struthiosaurus was the smallest of all the armored dinosaurs. Paleontologists theorize that the nodosaur may have originally been an island-dwelling dinosaur. To adapt to the limited space available, the species may have become smaller over generations of time. Struthiosaurus had bony armor scaled down to suit its 6.5-foot frame. The plates on its back were studded with low knobs, and modest spikes flanked its sides. Styracosaurus. This horned dinosaur had a most impressive appearance. It had an elaborate frill of bone around its neck that was supplemented by 6 spikes extending out over its shoulders. In addition, a huge horn grew straight up from the top of its snout, giving Styracosaurus the ability to lower its head and charge, doing considerable damage to its attacker. Styracosaurus was not easy prey for hungry carnivores, as it was well protected by its bony coverings. This plant eater's posture was threatening enough to have deterred predators even before a fight ensued. Supersaurus. Known from only a few large bones, Supersaurus was found in 1972 in a quarry in Colorado. This plant eater was one of the many great sauropods roaming the world in the late Jurassic period. Paleontologists estimate that Supersaurus was 80 to 100 feet long and over 50 feet tall. One neck bone discovered was the size of an adult human, and the shoulder blade that was unearthed was even larger. Syntarsus. The name Syntarsus means fused ankle, which is the only feature that distinguished this dinosaur from Coelophysis. Syntarsus was a light, fleet-footed predator, approximately 10 feet long. It made its home in Africa during the Triassic period. Syntarsus had powerful legs and clawed 3-fingered hands. Talaurus. Several skeletons of this barrel-bodied ankylosaur were found in Asia during the 1950s. Its name means basket tail, referring to the intertwined tendons that supported this dinosaur's tail club. Talaurus had bands of elongated plates covering its back, and spikes stuck out from the back of its skull. Spines of bone also protected its sides and tail. The ankylosaur's head was capped with small, oddly shaped plates of armor, and the clubbed tail was held out stiffly from its body. Like all armored dinosaurs, Talaurus was a ground-feeding herbivore. Tarbosaurus. This great carnivore was a bit smaller than Tyrannosaurus and may be distinguished from its relative by the size of its skull, which was longer, and the weight of its body, which was lighter. Despite its large size, Tarbosaurus held its body erect, in a posture much closer to that of a bird than any contemporary predatory mammal. The body weight was evenly distributed so that the upper body and tail balanced each other well at the hips. Its forearms were so short and weak that scientists have been puzzled, questioning the extent to which these limbs were of any use. Tarbosaurus had large claws for tearing flesh, and sharp meat-eating fangs within its huge mouth. Tarbosaurus had a curved, flexible neck that would have enabled it to wrench a deadly bite of flesh from any creature unfortunate enough to be locked between its powerful jaws. Tarkia. Asia's newest and best-known armored dinosaur is Tarkia, a 23-foot-long, four-legged plant-eater. Sizable bumpy plates of armor covered Tarkia's large skull, for which it was named. Tarkia means brain in Mongolian. Bony spikes grew from the top and bottom of Tarkia's skull, and its tail ended in a large club. A Polish paleontologist described this Cretaceous ankylosaur in 1977. Technosaurus. Technosaurus was an 8-foot plant-eater that was found in Texas. Alive during the Triassic period, this dinosaur was one of the first ornithischians known from the northern hemisphere. Technosaurus had leaf-shaped teeth used for chopping off the low-lying vegetation upon which it fed. Fossils of these teeth, as well as its spine and an ankle bone, were found in 1984. Telmatosaurus. Telmatosaurus is the only duck-billed dinosaur found in Europe. Fossils of the late Cretaceous marsh lizard were discovered in Romania, southern France, and Pyrenees. Like Hadrosaurus, Telmatosaurus had a deep skull, a toothless beak, and batteries of cheek teeth to grind the plant material it ate. Telmatosaurus was described in 1903 by a colorful Hungarian nobleman named Franz Baron Nopscha. Tenontosaurus. Many Tenontosaurus skeletons have been found in the western United States, ranging in size from juveniles to adults. The largest of these skeletons measured 22 feet. The tail alone made up 15 feet of that length. Tenontosaurus had a toothless, horny beak used to sever plant stems, and the sides of its jaws were packed with grinding teeth. Teeth belonging to Deinonychus were found with many Tenontosaurus skeletons that had fallen victim to their carnivorous neighbors. Tenontosaurus was closely related to both Camptosaurus and Hypsilophodon. Thecodontosaurus. This early prosauropod made its home in Europe and Africa during the late Triassic period. From its bones, many of which were found in caves, scientists have learned that Thecodontosaurus had a short neck and small head with many rough-edged, spoon-shaped teeth. Thecodontosaurus was an herbivore, probably using its thumb claws to uproot or tear the plants it consumed. When fully grown, this prosauropod reached about 7 feet in length. Thescelosaurus. Thescelosaurus was a stocky, 11-foot-long dinosaur that was one of the last hypsilophodontids on Earth. Unlike others in this family of dinosaurs, Abelisaurus had teeth in the front of its jaws and five-fingered hands that helped it gather leaves and other vegetation. Stiffened by tendons, Abelisaurus held its tail straight out to balance its body. Several fossilized skeletons of this dinosaur have been found in the United States and Canada.
Titanosaurus. No complete skeletons of Titanosaurus have been found, only fragmentary remains. Estimated to have reached 40 feet in length, this herbivore was not as long as many of the other sauropods, but it was quite heavy as it had solid vertebrae instead of hollowed-out bones. Titanosaurus may have had some kind of bony armor on its back, which would have been a most distinctive feature for a sauropod. Titanosaurus fossils have been found in Europe, Asia, and South America.
Torosaurus. Torosaurus holds the record for the largest skull ever possessed by a land animal. Its skull was 8.5 feet, over half of which was made up by its enormous neck frill. The huge frill of bone was smooth and was adorned with two robust brow horns. Torosaurus was a plant-eating ceratopsid, much rarer than its relative Triceratops. Its remains have been found in Canada and the United States. Triceratops. The largest and heaviest of all horned dinosaurs was Triceratops, which weighed 10 to 11 tons and grew to be up to 30 feet long. Herds of these magnificent animals roamed the western United States, thriving during the late Cretaceous period. Triceratops' skull was 6.5 feet long, with a short nose horn and long brow horns that earned this dinosaur its name, which means three-horned face. This dinosaur's neck frill was solid, more durable than most bone, which may explain why so many Triceratops skulls have been found. This plant eater was one of the last dinosaurs, surviving until about 65 million years ago. Troodon. Professor Joseph Leidy named Troodon Wounding Tooth in 1856 on the basis of a single pointed saw-edged tooth. This dinosaur was falsely described on numerous occasions until a jaw and other bones belonging to it had been found. Scientists now believe that Troodon was a 6 to 8 foot theropod with sickle-shaped slashing claws like Deinonychus and more teeth than any other dinosaur in that group. It also appears that Troodon had keen eyesight and one of the largest, most well-developed reptilian brains. Dinosaurs. One of the last dinosaurs surviving on Earth was a large Asian herbivore, Dinosaurus. This 38-foot hadrosaur was a most unusual-looking creature. In addition to its flat duckbill, it had a bony horn protruding from between its eyes, making it look like the mythical unicorn. Dinosaurus had a hard beak and overlapping rows of teeth to grind the plants it ate. Dinosaurs. Dinosaurus was a large Asian stegosaur from the late Jurassic period. It had pairs of narrow bony plates along its back, 4 tail spikes, and 2 shoulder spikes. Dinosaurus was an herbivore about 20 feet long. When it wasn't fleeing predators, it probably spent its time eating ferns and cicads. Tyrannosaurus. Tyrannosaurus rex was the largest predatory land animal to inhabit the Earth. Stunned by its immense stature and presumed ferocity, humans have turned this carnivore's likeness into the reptilian archetype. Curved, saw-edged fangs were rooted in the gargantuan jaws of a skull that was 6 feet long. Unlike other carnivores, Tyrannosaurus had forward-facing eyes, indicating that it could judge depth and distance with deadly accuracy. Once thought to be slow and stupid, scientists now estimate that T-Rex was capable of running as fast as 30 miles per hour. It weighed over 8 tons and was powerfully built with thick, well-muscled legs and a flexible neck. Tyrannosaurus was found exclusively in North America, where it probably preyed upon herds of hadrosaurs browsing in the Cretaceous forests. It used its relatively tiny forelimbs to grasp its prey while wrenching away chunks of meat that were swallowed whole. Tyrannosaurus clearly earned its menacing reputation, remaining in our minds as the ruling predator of all time. Ultrasaurus. In the 1970s, enormous bones from two great sauropods, Ultrasaurus and Supersaurus, were excavated from the Dry Mesa Quarry in southern Colorado. From a single massive bone, a vertebra from the rib area, paleontologists have determined that Ultrasaurus was one of the largest known dinosaurs. 90 feet long and weighing more than 80 tons, only 2 or 3 of these giants end to end would have fit within a city block. Ultrasaurus probably resembled an enormous giraffe. With its long neck, it could have peered into 6-story windows had there been any. Herds of these colossal creatures had little to fear from predators and must have consumed entire forests in their constant search for food. Utahraptor. In July of 1992, scientists unearthed a new dinosaur that has been tentatively named Utahraptor. This carnivore may well have been one of the fiercest dinosaurs, as its entire body seemed designed for attack. 20 feet long, this dromaeosaur had sharp knife-like teeth as well as clawed hands and feet. The claws on its fingers were 10 inches long, and it had 2 sickle-shaped claws on its feet that were an astonishing 12 inches. Utahraptor was also very quick. It could have overcome a victim in seconds, disemboweling it with one well-placed kick. To complete the profile, paleontologists have suggested that Utahraptors hunted in packs, which would have made them the most dreaded dinosaurs of the early Cretaceous period. Vectosaurus. This plant-eater from the early Cretaceous period was so similar to Iguanodon that some paleontologists thought it was a species of Iguanodon, especially since both animals lived in the same area during the same time period. Vectosaurus was much smaller than Iguanodon, however, and the spines that jutted upward from its backbone were higher, forming a distinct ridge. Partial remains of this 13-foot-long dinosaur were discovered on the Isle of Wight, off the coast of England. Velociraptor. Velociraptor was a small but fierce Asian carnivore. One of the most remarkable discoveries was that of the fossilized remains of Velociraptor and Protoceratops that had obviously died while fighting each other. Velociraptor was holding the bony head of its intended victim, digging its toe claws into the Protoceratops's unprotected belly. In defense, Protoceratops had apparently wounded its attacker with its hard beak. The two died in combat, preserved this way for millions of years. Huerosaurus. Huerosaurus was a medium-sized plated dinosaur from Asia. It was one of the only stegosaurs to survive beyond the Jurassic period into the early Cretaceous period. Huerosaurus had a double row of short plates along its back, as well as 4 lower tail spikes used to defend itself from predators. Like all stegosaurs, Huerosaurus was an herbivore, spending its days moving slowly in search of plants close to the ground. Yangchuanosaurus. Yangchuanosaurus was a 33-foot carnivore that lived during the late Jurassic period. Yangchuanosaurus dominated dinosaur life on the Asian continent, while its counterpart Allosaurus ruled in North America. This meat-eater's skull was close to 4 feet long, and its jaws were filled with curved, jagged-edged teeth. Yangchuanosaurus had a crest of bone that ran from between its eyes to the end of its snout. and it had another bony ridge further defining the line of its back. This dinosaur also had sharp claws to grasp its prey. Zephyrosaurus. Zephyrosaurus was found in Montana and was given its name meaning west wind lizard in 1980. Zephyrosaurus weighed very little and was 6 feet in length. It had ridged teeth and probably avoided predators by sprinting away on 2 legs. An ornithopod, its closest relative was Hypsilophodon. Both of these small browsing dinosaurs lived during the early part of the Cretaceous period.